All right, people. So this is going to be, I guess, on the fourth hit attempt. I don't know if it's necessarily in sequential order or necessarily the fourth one, but like I said, I stopped counting at 13, or at least as many as I can remember, but it was definitely somewhere around that number. In other words, it definitely happened on that same big weekend where a lot of them did, in which I usually say that the big boys, quote unquote, had come down from, well, let's just say an inserted land that they apparently made for themselves back in the 1800s. Anyway, so yeah, it was during that same weekend where a lot of this took place. It was in the same immediate area. This one, however, bounced between, started out in one area and then ended up moving to another. The superstore's name, by the way, that this started out in front of, it rhymes with Call Bart. Okay, Call Bart. Now I had kind of a strange, I guess you could say, like a strange revelation when I was trying to come up with, all right, what's an example I could use. Right after I'd come up with it, it kind of dawned on me that not only does that name sound the same as the name I kind of came up with, it also rhymes with the name of this superstore. And this was the same superstore, by the way. If you have had a chance to view something I have, a segment I have up there called, I think it's entitled one of the How I Was Attacked ones, and it's called Mr. Register and the Dobermans. That's the same superstore I was referring to about Mr. Register. And that, anyway, so this starts out in front of that particular superstore. But anyway, the movie Paul Blart Mall Cop. Paul Blart Mall Cop. So Paul Blart, that also sounds like, Call Bart, and it also sounds like the name of that superstore. So anyway, I just kind of had that little revelation there when I was trying to put this segment together, because, and I also thought, well, maybe that's one of the reasons why they get so heated and frustrated with me, because I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because a lot of my train of thought seems to be, not that I'm at all proud of it, but somewhat in the same neighborhood as some of their protocols are. Anyway, so this is going to start out in front of there. It started out with all the swarming and the gang stalkers, but at this point it was not just one or two, teenagers or young adults. I mean, like I said, this was the weekend that they had specifically brought, at one point during the big day, which is kind of what I call the big pursuit, up on one of those segments there under How I Was Attacked. There, at one point, as I was sitting there looking at everybody, it must have been, and I already tell this story, so I'm not going to go over it again here, but there must have been, it could have been around 50 something, maybe 60 or 70, or 80, who knows, depending on how many shifts they used. But it was a lot, and the personnel was very different. It wasn't just these, young adults that were probably somebody's kids, that were related to, them, just figuring out, being able to make like, I don't know, $1,000 an hour for, doing unconstitutional activity, crimes basically, toward, the innocent, honest, hardworking people of America. But anyway, this was very different. It was, the guys were all in there. They looked like they just came out of a cubicle. They had nice dress pants, dress shirt on, 40, 45, 50 years old with, very nicely combed hair, whatever. A lot of the license plates came from Washington, D.C., as I saw, Virginia, Maryland, that general area. There was a few that trickled down toward the south as well, but that's the majority of the license plates, the vehicles, and that ended up stalking me that I saw. So it's very different. And there was a bunch. It was everybody's wives and girlfriends and cousins and whatever, bright junior agents coming up or whatever, maybe, who knows. But it was a lot. Every time I would go in the superstore, if I spoke with any, they'd say, where's your soap at, or something. Immediately, they had already camped out in the manager's office and security cameras where they keep those, their favorite word, right, surveillance, because it wasn't not even 1 second, not even a second after I finished speaking with that individual, they would get immediately called to the manager's office. So it was easy to tell that they're watching. Anyway, that's that weekend I'm referring to. All right, now, so the swarming they would do would be, they, keep swarming around you where you were parked. I just happened to be in a parking lot at this time. This is after their grand larceny of my family's home and everything we own took place. After they were officially, I guess, aware that I, may, quote unquote, may know something as far as the refinancing scam that I had uncovered that they tried to do to me and my family, and I had caught it, and you know how it goes from there when you catch it, and you finally have no other choice than to back you into a corner. But when you report it, you have to, because otherwise they're gonna end up railroading you and your home and all your family's belongings. Well, they did that, ended up doing it anyway, even though I made them aware of why they weren't supposed to be there, and I stood on my constitutional rights, and even on the state rights, but mostly, first of all, I stood on the proof that they did not have. They just simply didn't have anything, nothing that authorized them to be there or to do what they did. Excuse me. So anyway, and of course, as I said in the other segment, when I covered this part of my story, they wouldn't hardly at all let me talk, because the people who had obviously briefed all, 30 something of them, and their 25, 30 vehicles that had showed up to do this to me, but they do that to everybody, right? Canine, and SWAT, and sheriffs, and local police, and ambulances, and all that stuff, right? Utility trucks, unmarked vehicles, you name it, they were there. But they do that to everybody, right? They must, right? Because, Anyway, so they, back to the superstore, they had started their swarming stage of what they're doing, where they come and park right next to you. They start giving you the eye. They pretty soon occupy all the parking spaces around you. Immediately to the sides, diagonally to the right and left, right in front, and then all the spaces behind you. If you're, but there's the way in which the cars go up and down the parking lot. That's the only thing in between them. But yeah, so they pretty much had it all covered. So they started that swarming, like I said in the other segment as well. They had their honking system in place where they would honk. Now, just for example, and well, hell, this is not an example. This is just what they did. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. Usually, if I was in the car, you'd have, and you could tell they gave the order to anyone and or everyone who had a fix, quote unquote, on my location. If I got in my car, you would hear and shut the door, you would hear a honk, you'd hear one honk. When I would exit the car or the vehicle, you would hear a honk, honk. That meant I was out of the car. And back in the car, you'd hear another honk. Now, if I left the premises for any reason, if I was going to leave the premises for any reason, you would hear a honk, honk, honk. And then they would flash their bright lights on and off and all that crap. No, forgive me, I'm sorry. Again, I'm sorry. So anyway, that went on. I finally got tired of it and sick of it. I just got out of my vehicle. This is at night already. I just stood out there and started staring everybody down. I didn't care already at this point. I was like, you know what, whatever. And then finally, one of them actually, as I walked back up toward the superstore, because I was literally just gonna, and at this point I was actually still naive enough to think that, you know, calling the police would do any good. And then, of course, you know, I had a very rude awakening there very shortly after, because I started to see they were actually participating in the attempt itself. And that was the most disappointing thing I saw. And that wasn't just once. That was multiple times I saw that. It might have been in a little different way at times, but it was directly participating. And I've already explained all that in the other segments. So just look at all the other hit attempts. You'll hear it or see it or whatever. Or hear it when I explain it, when you watch the video. Or listen to the recording. Whichever. All right, now, so this is at the point where I'm going back in there. One of them actually tried to get so close to me during their swarming. He misjudged, or maybe he didn't, but he misjudged and he actually hit me from behind. And all it did was just shuffle my feet forward a couple of, you know, maybe 6 to 12 inches. And when that happened, I was ticked at this point, so I just, you know, stared him down, and, you know, he stared me down, I stared him down, and I just stood there because we were in the middle of there was cars behind him. So they were obviously, and there was a few people that had seen that, and I didn't have a worry in the world. Me, I just wanted to tear his freaking head off and then start getting creative from that point. But I didn't have to worry because there was already a couple of people honking at him and had seen what he had done. So if he had any kind of brains about him, being that he has already done a hit and run and refused to get out and check on it, and we're on the victim, which would be me, instead giving the victim the stink eye. Are you freaking kidding me, man? Forgive my language. I didn't have a worry, so I just waited. Kept staring him down, and I just waited. So finally he had to get out of there because I think the other people were starting to creep up on him. And then what happened after that, after all this swarming and honking and all that stuff, and I had confirmed all of that, I did finally manage to get a hold of the police, and of course they show up and they do something in classic police fashion. And I'll continue that in the second part of this. See you then.